out of the 10 internet users in India are women. And if you go at the rural-urban divide, you see that that is even more, so that there is a kind of 52% gap compared to the 34% gap. You know, but even in areas like technology, banking, telecom, there is a big gap. And even in issues such as agriculture, if you look at it, ownership of land is hugely concentrated still in male hands, and not more than 2% of land is exclusively in women's names. Actually, one of the interesting areas is women in media. And in media, we see that you do have quite a lot of women journalists and women editors. So hopefully it would lead to less skewed reporting. But it is not always the case. You know, it's not the case that all women are necessarily feminists, in the sense that if you take feminists to mean, which it is the definition, is to mean to believe in equal rights for men and women. So I hope, you know, that all of us here in this room, men and women in that sense, are feminists. But it's come to be seen as a sort of us against them issue, which of course it is not. It is just the mere belief that women and men are equal, girls and boys are equal, and that we all have the same equal rights, in whether it's in political, social, or economic spheres. I think another big issue that has been talked about and we are looking at addressing is the issues of health, and especially maternal health and women's health. And in one of the critical areas is about women's anemia. So we have about 53% even today of women in India are anemic, which is the fact that in this room, one out of, you know, each of us is going to be anemic, which is a very high issue, and very high number. And if you look at it, it's actually compared to Africa. So even though we may have had much higher economic development in the country compared to many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, 42% of women were underweight when pregnant in 2016 in India, as compared to 16% of African women. So that might, and we know the knock-on consequences, because if you're an underweight mother, gives birth to an underweight baby, and then the whole cycle continues. So I know that there is going to be a whole session on health and nutrition over the next few days. So I hope that we can look at both the challenges that we face, but what can be done to overcome it. And the government of India has taken cognizance of it. At the Tata Trust, we are partnering on a massive Poshan Abhiyan to reach across the country to both make sure supplies of things like iron and folic acid are distributed, but also in terms of the awareness raising. And then another issue that is very critical is the whole issue of violence against women. And right now it is much more debated and reported. It's not clear, even though the figures seem to be going up, whether they are actually going up or whether it is reporting that's going up. But either way, they are far too high. I mean, across the world, 35% of women experience physical or sexual violence at some point of their life. And this has several knock-on effects. Trafficking remains a very serious issue still, and adult women are about 52% of all those trafficked. And if you actually look at girls, women and girls, that's children under the age of 18, it comprises 71%. And even though we have made progress on issues such as child marriage, they still remain high, with 700 million girls being married under the age of 18. So these are some of the challenges, and especially in this part of the world, issues like child marriage persist. And even though we have laws, we have very strict laws, but I think in these areas it is very much a case of social attitudes and the deep patriarchy. So I think that it's very important to take on board both men and boys in this issue of gender equality, to work with laws and with policies, but also to work on changing social attitudes that have been there for centuries, not just decades. And therefore, I think the role of boys and men to support and believe in gender equality is equally important as empowering girls and women themselves. And I think this is I think it's a very important time that there is more awareness, there is more discussion, and with the SDGs that we can actually make that shift and improve life and create more equality for both men and women and girls and boys. So I'll leave you with a quote from one of my favorite male feminists, if you like, and where he said that while I keep working on good policies, from equal pay for equal work to protecting reproductive rights, there are some changes that have nothing to do with passing new laws. In fact, the most important change may be the toughest of all, and that is changing ourselves. It is absolutely man's responsibility to fight for gender equality too. And as spouses and partners and brothers, we need to work hard to be deliberate about creating truly equal relationships. So that was from Barack Obama. And I want to wish you all the best for the conference. And it would be really good to debate the lessons from each of the countries in the region and learn from each other and plan ahead so that we create a more equal world for boys and girls and men and women. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Ms. Lalita Kumara Mangalam, Director, India Foundation, and former Chairperson, National Commission for Women, to say a few words.
Dignitaries on the dais, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I would like to welcome you all again to not only this inaugural meeting, but tomorrow's conference. I won't take up too much of your time by repeating what either Veena-ji or I can never pronounce her names properly, sorry, Shireen-ji said. But I would like to add a few points of my own, which are basically born out of the experience that I had as 3 years as head of the National Commission for Women in India. Now, traditionally, the Commission deals with different types of violence against women. And I feel that violence against women is endemic. It's not just local to South Asia or Southeast Asia. All over the world, there's violence against women. And one of the biggest causes is not just the mindset of men and boys, but also the mindset of women. So when we talk about changing mindsets, we have to address both men and women. A lot of the violence that I have seen perpetrated on young girls, middle-aged women in India has not always been initiated by men. It may sometimes have been carried out by men, but there have been enough women behind that violence also. So we need to work with both men and women, which is why I was always happy when Veena-ji told me that they are actually working with women, not just on women's issues in the media, but with women who work in the media. Because it makes a big difference when somebody writes about something they actually believe in versus something that they hear outside and they feel they should espouse a cause. That is, we have to talk about women's empowerment and women's equity, therefore we write about it. It makes a very big difference when somebody actually believes in it and writes about it, and if it's just something that they're writing or on rote. I think the two main issues that are going to be discussed in the conference about from media are women's malnutrition or lack of nutrition, I suppose, and it will extend to children, because anywhere you work with women, it automatically extends to children also. And that, I think, is a very important aspect. because I come from one of the southern states of this country, traditionally considered one of the better administered states. But even there, we have 42% anemia. People don't talk about menstrual health in our country even now, and it's a joke that we all make in 27 years of working on women's issues. It's a joke that we still make today, that while India continues to be the largest growing population in the world, we don't talk about sex or anything to do with sexual issues at all. So where those babies turn up from, we make a joke and say we don't know. So young girls are not taught to look after their health. One of the things that stands in the way of women actually becoming healthier is because they don't themselves access health care. If you just take one issue that has become very popular in India over the last 6 months to a year, the use of sanitary napkins. The government has now started making available, especially in the so-called 100 aspirational districts, sanitary napkins at 1 rupee a napkin, which is affordable by almost all women, including the poor ones, and even those, there could be further subsidy that could be given. But do women even know that they need to use them in order to protect their health? It's promoted more as a tool of convenience, not health. Whereas it is actually something that is more, that addresses or rather keeps women more healthy than if you use other forms of protection when you're having your periods. Even using these words is still pretty uncommon in this country. So I don't think that this is only, how India is. I think this happens all over the world. And all the countries that are represented here today have a lot of commonalities. Whether it is in gender bias or the lack of gender equity, whether it's in the lack of education or access to equity, as we say, for women, but also in the lack of involvement of men of all ages. I just came from a meeting where there was a minister from Singapore, and he was asked about how it is that Singapore has, I think, 100% literacy. How was that brought about? So he said, well, we started literally young. We used to ensure that in every family, we absolutely made sure, and it was almost like totalitarianism, that we said that unless your children go to school and study up to middle school, there are certain benefits that the government will or will not give. Now, I can't imagine that happening in India, but nonetheless, having reached there, he was saying that today, women who are in the upper income bracket and men who are in the lowest income bracket are the ones who are not getting married, because the men are afraid to marry women who earn more than them and may be stronger than them, or they feel may be stronger than them. And the women are telling the men that, you can't, I can look after you better than you look after me, so why do I need you? So now I'm not saying that's the ideal situation. We don't need to get there. But most of our countries have a very long way to getting to where countries like Singapore are. In most cases, I have found that it is access that limits women's empowerment or women's growth. Sometimes I think empowerment is, an abused word almost. Very often we don't even know what we're talking about when we say empowerment. It's more a question of access to everything that anybody else in society has, whether it's education, whether it's clothing, whether it's food, whether it's access to healthcare, and also, the right to take a few years off when you want to be a mother. There's no harm in it. But we need to get our heads around that and make those concessions that we agree. Everybody wants to have a family. But you don't look at the sacrifices, or let's not talk of it as a sacrifice. You don't look at the lack of choice that women have when a family has to be started, a young woman. Her best years of both reproduction and in terms of productivity at work, they coincide, or rather they clash. And there are just not enough alternatives available for her, whether it is basically what do most young mothers want, a safe place to leave their child when they go to work. And that's what we don't have in almost all our countries. Very few countries actually have it. Countries where governments and policies have been framed and implemented in such a way that women can go to work without worrying about, am I to get pregnant, or being asked in interviews, have you been married? How long you married? Have you a child? Are you going to have a child? Etc. etc. Those countries have actually not only hit higher productivity, but also in terms of lifestyles, that is better livelihoods, better lifestyles, better health outcomes, etc., have done much better. A lot of our countries every country wants it. A lot of our countries have moved quite a long way along these roads, but we still have a long way to go. So before, as I said, I don't want to repeat myself, before I start sounding boring, my best of luck for the next 2 days of the conference, and my congratulations to SWAN and Veena ji especially for lasting for 10 years in a very non-gendered atmosphere that has existed in our part of the world, in fact in many other parts of the world also. But I do know that things are getting much better. If a woman my age can stand up here and talk the way I can, I think there is hope for the future. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Her Excellency Shehzada Sharif to address the audience.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Minister of Health, Dr. Dichen from Bhutan, Ambassador Veena ji, and the dignitaries in the dais. Also, all the executives and the very active members from South Asian countries and different parts of the world who are present here. I wish you a very good evening and namaste. It's indeed a great honor for me to be here to speak to you all in this very important gathering. And first and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the management of South Asian Women Network for giving me this very wonderful opportunity to be here in this auspicious occasion. It is obvious that the women sitting right in front of me at this moment are from different countries. We differ from one another in our nationalities, cultures, ethnicities, dialects, religion, and professions. However, what unifies us is being South Asian women. We are gathered here to voice for our rights, share our experiences, and find avenues for our future endeavors. The women all around the world have the right to live freely without being a victim of violence, slavery, and discrimination. They have the right to be educated, right to be own properties, right to vote, and to earn a fair and equal wage, and many more like their opposite gender have. Ladies and gentlemen, unlike many other countries, Maldives is a very unique country. Most of you must have heard Maldives as the sunny side of life, but we have many more to go. Our population is less than 500,000, out of which 50% are women. We speak same language all across entire country. Our native language is very closely inherited like Sinhalese, Hindi, and Urdu. We are a 100% Sunni Muslim nation with same culture and ethnicity. Despite all these similarities, we still have faced some challenges as other South Asian countries. With much joy and pleasure, I must acknowledge that the year 2018 was a promising year for women in the Maldives. Newly elected President of the Maldives appointed 6 women cabinet ministers, establishing a gender-balanced cabinet for the first time in the history of the Maldives. Remarkably, for the first time in the Maldives, a woman being appointed as a Minister of Defense. We further look forward to having fair share of women in the parliament and judiciary as well. Ladies and gentlemen, to our disappointment, with all these progresses made, we have 87 constituencies sworn in the parliament. However, our recent election only made up only 4 women to the parliament, which is a great disappointment. But we never stopped there. We still strive for the progress, and we would like to make sure to see our fair share in our parliament as well. Women, however, it has not yet been considered both by the community and politically as the equal part of the society. Key role of the parliament institutions like Parliament is to oversee the work of the government and make the government accountable, make laws and debate on issues which affect entire population. To be honest, this imperative work lack representation of women. In other words, these works are carried out without a say from half of our population. Furthermore, handful of women represent in the judiciary. Both the bench of High Court and Supreme Court had no women until very recently. I believe this is the case not just in the Maldives, but many of our South Asian countries and most of the countries around the globe. But in the meantime, the Constitution of the Maldives prohibits any discrimination based on gender. In addition to this, Maldives has enacted a Gender Equality Act in 2016, which delineates provision of general principle to achieve gender equality, and it prohibits victimization. Recently, the President has taken initiative to represent more women in city, atoll, and island councils. As part of those processes, amendments have been made to decentralization framework by allocating minimum 33% of all council seats for women. Another encouraging initiative by the President is endorsing 2 female judges to the vacant position of the Supreme Court bench. It's like a dream coming true for our country. Soon we are going to have women participation in our judicial system, the highest judicial system as well. Though it has some challenges in the belief of certain groups of people within the country. However, the challenge has been taken and we're still working for the progress, making sure that participation of women are ensured. Traditional gender roles continues to exist in the Maldives, which hinder women from enjoying the benefits of a gender equitable society. We all know that success does not happen overnight. Especially when it comes in changing social norms and behavior, it needs time, space, patience, continuous effort, and sincere commitment. Although the Maldives has enacted important legislations and has become one of the few countries with gender equality law, we still have gender gaps like many other South Asian countries which needed to be addressed. Together with the support of international agencies, we are in the final stage of implementing a national gender policy covering the 3S: rights, representation, and resources. This policy will address the key areas in order to alleviate current imperatives, including economic empowerment, institutional gender mainstreaming, leadership and government, preventing gender-based violence, and access to justice. One of the biggest challenges faced to the women of the region is unpaid work. Like many others have highlighted the issue, childcare, cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping, etc., and etc. are believed as part of our work, like the women's work. But if these jobs are not performed, there is no doubt that the society will stop functioning itself and the economy will collapse. Interestingly, a recent survey conducted in the Maldives showed that when the total paid and unpaid work hours are added, women spend more hours than men at work. The introduction of paid paternity leave in the Maldives is one of the many policies implemented to alleviate such gender inequalities in household chores and work-family conflict, but there is still more to do. The government of the Maldives will continue its effort in promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, and increasing their economic status and economic empowerment and political participation. We will continue doing our work. On this note, I will now conclude my speech, and I hope that there will be a great sharing of thoughts and a great knowledge exchange in the upcoming 2 years. And I wish you a very pleasant and a good evening. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Her Excellency Dr. Dechen Wangmo to address those present.
As we say in Bhutan, Kuzuzangpo, Namaskar. and it gives me an immense pleasure to address the gathering here. Honorable dignitaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of the Bhutanese delegation, would like to express our warmest greeting from Bhutan and our thanks to the organizer to giving us this platform to speak. I think a lot has been said by my previous speakers, so I will like to actually take a moment to share what, as a nation, as a Bhutan, that we are planning for our women and children in Bhutan. If we look at policies, convention, treaties, action plans, I think I'm quite confident that many of the countries that are represented here have in their country. You have ratified the treaties, we have, based on the treaties, we have drafted strategies, then we have, developed action plan, then we costed the action plan, and now I feel it's time to act, time to deliver, time to touch lives. With that, of course, we are very new to, I am very new to governments, governance, I must say. This is our 8th month running. We are the third democratically elected government at the moment. And as most of you are aware that in Bhutan, the development is guided by the philosophy of gross national happiness. And that, of course, is based primarily on 4 major pillars. So you have economy, conservation of environment, conservation of culture, and good governance. And right in the middle of this 4 pillar, as the roof that is supported by the 4 pillar, is health and well-being of a human being. And the center of that, the nucleus of that, is women and children. So I'm extremely happy to inform the forum here that with guidance from the Ministry of Health, we have just approved a policy called Accelerating Mother and Child Health. As we talk about malnutrition, malnutrition is a vicious cycle. It has many links. Unless we can address all the links, it will not be addressed. Malnutrition starts at the womb. So then the child is born malnutrited. The child grows up, gets married. The malnutrition continues, comes back as a mother. So we wanted to break that chain. So this policy that we are eagerly waiting implementation in 2020 will basically take care of a pregnant mother from the time of conception till the baby is 2 years old. So we have must have heard about 1,000 golden days. 1,000 golden days. There are many literature, many proven science that says we must invest in our children during this age. In Bhutan, what we have designed is that at your first booking, every pregnant mother in Bhutan will complete 8 ANC visits, antenatal care visits, immunization, postnatal care, and then basically supported by the government till the child is 2 years old, during which we will not only have monitoring of the child, but we'll also have congenital disability screening, supplementary, complementary feeding programs, all built into this one policy called Accelerating Mother and Child Policy that will be starting in 2020. The second program that we are equally excited is really, if we look at Bhutan, cervical cancer is one of the leading cause of cancer in Bhutan for women. And that is true, I think, in many Southeast Asia countries, cervical cancer. Most of our cancer patients, cancers are detected in third stage, where nothing much can be done. So our commitment to our people is that we are going to screen, and we have committed ourselves that we will eliminate cervical cancer from Bhutan, so that our women can productively contribute to nation building. Our mothers can productively and meaningfully raise a healthy child. And this is what we are trying to translate these action plans into reality. And with this, I want to call upon everyone gathered here that it is time to act. It is time to act, it is time to deliver, and it is time to touch lives. Because I think unless we act, we will never know. We will make mistakes, I think, on the way. But it's okay, we have tried it. Because if you look at the data today, I think it is, especially for Southeast Asia region, it's not very encouraging, I must say. You know, if I really want to acknowledge the presence of so many talented and diverse groups here. So this 2-day workshop, we can go out with a very strong commitment to deliver and really not only empower our women, but make them equal partners in the effort to build our nation together. So I think it needs a collective effort. We need to act on it, and we need to deliver. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank all our esteemed speakers for this evening and would now like to invite Ambassador Veena Sikri to kindly read a message from Honorable Dr. Najma Heptullah, Governor of Manipur, followed by the vote of thanks.
Dear friends, we had our chief guest, Honorable Dr. Najma Heptullah, Governor of Manipur. She could not join us today and she could not leave Imphal due to ill health, but she has sent us a very warm message, and she has said that I convey my heartiest greetings and best wishes to the organizers of the 10th Annual Conference of the South Asia Women's Network, to be held on 31st August 2019 and 1st and 2nd September. I was eagerly looking forward to be in the company of such august gathering of eminent women representing different South Asian countries, but due to circumstances beyond my control, I am missing this opportunity. My sincere regrets to you all. This event marks a decade of SWAN's journey since its inception in March 2009, and I am happy that during the conference, prominent women leaders belonging to a wide spectrum of social backgrounds and representing 9 South Asian countries, including India, will deliberate on the theme Gender Empowerment for Sustainable Development, Issues and Challenges Facing the Women of South Asia. The motto of SWAN is Wisdom, Unity, Dignity, and it encapsulates the network's vision to achieve sustainable development for South Asia through an integrated approach with women at the center as stakeholders, active participants, and leaders, and not merely as objects of the development process. SWAN's key focus is overcoming the serious challenges confronting the women of South Asia, which are common across the borders. I am happy that SWAN's 10th annual conference will feature discourses on issues and challenges of the South Asian women in their struggle for gender empowerment and sustainable development. I support the view that governments should proactively pursue the principle of gender budgeting to ensure adequate fund allocation for women-specific schemes, and also the general development programs which benefit women. There should be sufficient fund flow to advance the cause of women for a level playing field. It is important that special provisions are made for economic empowerment of women along with their political empowerment in order to enable them to use new opportunities in today's world. Empowering women in South Asia is important to ensure an equitable growth of the region, and for this, gender equality is the first step. Our South Asian women should identify their strengths and abilities and move towards a world of empowerment. I firmly believe that during the conference, eminent representatives from South Asian countries and experts will have ample opportunities to interact and exchange their views on issues pertaining to gender empowerment for sustainable development of the women of South Asia for a way forward. I wish the 10th Annual Conference of the South Asia Women's Network a grand success. Signed, Najma Heptullah. I thank Honorable Governor of Manipur, Honorable Dr. Najma Heptullah, for sending us this warm message, and we really miss her and will convey to her the outcome of our conference. With this, I'd like to just make a very, very sincere and heartfelt vote of thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank the India Islamic Cultural Center for giving us and hosting us today on this wonderful venue. I'd like to thank in particular Janab Sirajuddin Qureshi for his support and encouragement at every stage in our efforts, and his entire team here at the India Islamic Cultural Center. I'd like to thank Vanashri Rao, she's left now, but for the wonderful Abhimanyu word that she gave us. It was very, very interesting indeed. I'd like to really sincerely thank at this point also the Tata Trust and Shireen Vakil. The Tata Trust has been an immense fountain of support. In fact, without Tata Trust, this conference would not be taking place. Their philanthropy, their support for gender causes, their support for a whole range of activity that benefits society, it benefits women and children in particular, their philanthropy is legendary. And now we in the South Asia Women's Network have experienced it for this conference. We hope to continue our interaction, and we hope to work together on some of the issues that we have all talked about today, including malnutrition and unpaid women's work. I'd like to thank Srimati Lalita Kumaramangalam, Director of the India Foundation, for her unwavering support to the South Asia Women's Network. She's been a great source of advice. She's on our advisory board. She gives me the best ideas on what to do and how to get things done. And I really thank you for taking this immense interest in everything that we do. I'd like to thank Her Excellency Shizata Sharif for coming to join us. It has really been wonderful to have you here. I remember we met when you came earlier for our India Foundation conference, and there too we had such excellent discussions. And when we spoke about the South Asia Women's Network, you immediately empathized with what we do, because it is so similar, the problems are so similar with your country. And really the delegation from Maldives has always been a very dynamic and active participant in our discussion. So thank you so much for coming here and for giving us such an important insight into what is happening in Maldives on gender issues. I'd like to particularly thank Her Excellency Dr. Dechen Wangmo, Minister of Health of the Royal Government of Bhutan, for giving us this excellent presentation on what is happening with women's causes in Bhutan. I know it's a new government, but I can see that there's so many tremendously good ideas that they are putting forward, with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Health being such dynamic medical practitioners in their own right, in their own fields. I know that there will be tremendous success in their efforts. I must first, I cannot even leave this place without thanking my wonderful colleagues from South Asia who have come across from far and near, and who've come in such large numbers, and who've been with us from the beginning and have then succeeded so much. We have, for example, from Bhutan, Ketang Sukchi Dorji, who is now a member of parliament. We have, others who have come from members of parliament from Bangladesh. I really recognize their presence and thank them for coming all the way. Shagufta Yasmin and Salima Ahmed for coming and joining us. I thank the member of parliament from Afghanistan, Mariam Sama, for coming all the way to be with us in this conference. And I thank Shaheen Anam, and I thank Dr. Afsana Kausar and Professor Indra Hirve and all the people who have come from every corner of South Asia. We have a network, but you know that this network means that we are in touch on the email all the time, and we follow very closely what each of us is doing. We share in all our successes and our joys, and we share in all our difficulties, and we do a lot even on media. I mean, recently, I must tell you that in Afghanistan, the peace talks have been going on for a long time, and at one point when there was a great deal of concern in Afghanistan about the role of women after the peace deal is concluded, and there was a concern that women would not be able to get their due rights under the new deal. And so we were in touch with our colleagues in Afghanistan, and Zulekha wrote a wonderful article after consulting all her friends in Afghanistan in the Afghan Women's Network, and that article was put on the website of the India Foundation and many other places, and it brought a great awareness about what is going to happen about women in the post-peace deal. So in this way we really do that. I would like to say also that in this project, for example, in the work that is being done on the media project, it's a very unique method that we have of working, that we agree on our projects together when we are in our meetings, like we are going to be for the next 2 days, but then we go back to our own countries and the institutions and individuals concerned work on the implementation. So it's a collective effort to decide, but then when we go back, we work separately and then come together with the results. So it's a very unique but effective method of putting our work together, and I'd like to thank each and every one of our colleagues. I'd like to particularly thank the Sidomal group for supporting us also in this conference. Their support has been very valuable and has enabled us to actually cross the T's and dot the I's and make this conference happen. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here. I'd request you all to join us for high tea downstairs. Thank you very much indeed. Can I ask the South Asia Women's Network members to come up on the stage? We can have a photograph with our folks here. Thank you. Thank you.